I'm Nick Seco from HomeRight Windows and Doors, and we're located in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. So we do vinyl replacement windows, we do steel and fiberglass entry doors, we do aluminum storm doors, and we do sliding patio doors, all made by Provia. The windows are a vinyl replacement window, and it could be anything from double hungs to casements to bay and bow windows and everything in between. So when somebody calls in the office and needs an estimate, they get Roxanne on the phone typically, and she would schedule an appointment for me to come out and take some measurements, provide some literature, go through what options we have, and then I would follow up within about 24 to 48 hours with an estimate with all the details of the products as well as the installed price. I find that we're typically much more affordable than the companies that you see advertising on TV or in a lot of other places. If they're spending a lot of advertising dollars, obviously they're passing those costs on to their consumers. You could go to our website at homerightwaynesboro.com, or you could call us at 717-749-4874.
Local and live, covering Franklin and Washington counties, it's Let's Talk TriState.
Hey, welcome back to Let's Talk TriState. I'm Andy, and this is all powered by HomeRight Windows and Doors in Waynesboro. They're the right choice. Online at homerightwaynesboro.com. We have Kevin Macomber here today. Pleasure to have you on.
Hey, thank you,
Glad
Andy.
to have you here.
Glad to be here.
We're here to talk about your book, Walking from the Shadows, a conversation about PTSD, healing, and hope. You're author, advocate, and a decorated veteran. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Your book, Walking from the Shadows, isn't really written by a clinician, so to speak. It's written by someone who's lived through the trauma. Why was it important to share your story in your own words for others to hear?
Well, as I tell people, I didn't actually have a goal to writing a book. The way it came about was we moved to Pennsylvania 5 years ago, and I found a very large box of notes. I had journaled for 15 years, so I'm 30 plus years into my healing. But 30 years ago, there were absolutely no resources for veterans. You hear about the low resources now, but there were none then. I just happened upon journaling. I started journaling. Now, I found this box of notes, and some of it made sense, some of it didn't. But what happened was, in my mid-50s, I started having cognitive issues. I've got brain issues that they're still trying to work through right now. And by the time I was in my late 50s, I pushed myself into retirement. I went back to the box, and I said, wow, you've got a book here. There's some incredible content in here. So I started mapping it out, and I saw an opportunity to help younger veterans in particular. I've been involved with veterans charities and fundraising for about 20 years. But the book transformed because as I started writing it and I started having people look at the chapters, they weren't all veterans. And the response was quite incredible for what it was. And I said, I saw I had a bigger opportunity to, speak to a broader audience and be what I've coined trauma agnostic, not so much focusing on just the military experience and what that's like. Right.
We actually met at an event, the Rural Salute to Veterans out in Connellsburg. Yeah, and you were kind of telling me a little bit about your story there, and that's when I think we decided to, we were wanting to tell your story, and I gave you the contact info, and here we are now. So I'm so happy you're here. You talked about the response that you did have. What do you think the best audience that you're able to reach? Obviously, veterans are going to reach out to you about your book, but other than veterans, what age range do you see kind of flocks to that type of story? And they, I'm trying to word it the right way, but I can't figure out the words to say.
Well, who is looking for information may be a tighter question to ask. So, when I wrote the book, I wasn't looking at it being age specific. But what's unique about the book, and most of these mental health books, and there's hundreds of thousands of, mental health books, and probably 20, 30,000 PTSD books. The vast majority, probably 99% plus, are all written by academics or the clinicians who treat it. but almost none of them are in third person. And particularly what makes this book so unique is I actually journal what it was like during the time, and then what it was like to try to crawl out from underneath those symptoms. And then fast forward 20 plus years of going, what were the things that I did to change my life? That said, with the audience, I have found that it is family members or friends or siblings, particularly I see siblings, sometimes wives, but a lot of siblings trying to help out a family member, and they want to understand what is it like, what's going on in their head, and with that then they can build a strategy, how can I best support them, listen, be there for them, whatever it may be.
Right. And the community beyond just the military community, that support group for those military members and veterans is gigantic as well, along with the military community in general. So reaching that audience seems to be key for you. Was that a conscious decision while you were writing this book?
I don't think it was. I think it just sort of happened, and I stumbled into it. And, if you have an opportunity, as a veteran, you care about everybody, right? That's ultimately what your oath was when you went into service. And that's how I look at it, and also being, I'm 61, I look at, well, this could be a partner, or this could be a kid, or a grandkid, or a friend's kid, and you look at life slightly different, when you're older. You say, how can I help as many people here as possible?
Right. When you structured the book as you're writing it, people can read chapters in any order that they wanted to. Anybody could read a chapter in any order, but the book probably wouldn't make sense for a regular written book. Why'd you take that approach? How does it help others on their healing journey?
It does. So one of the things that I noticed when most of these books, as I said, are written by doctors or clinicians, and they tend to be more story-based or client-based, meaning they'll talk about a client and they had these, and these issues, and then they'll sort of go broader into it. When I found my notes, I found a pattern of how I would write. I would write about, when you journal, you're writing about your symptom. Okay, today I'm feeling really down, or I'm very angry today, or I'm very sad, or I'm wanting to isolate, all that. And when I took these notes, I put topics on them so I could bring some organization. You're talking a banker's box is a lot of journaling, right? And I put titles on them, and I've got a very large kitchen, and I just started stacking them by title. So we're actually probably 3 dozen stacks, and then as I wrote the book, I brought it down to 16 chapters. But each chapter is a standalone symptom. So in the case with veterans, one of the most common things I hear is that veterans who have PTSD, and this is true for all people who have PTSD, they have difficulties trusting people. There's just this deep trust, and so what does that lead to? It leads to isolating. So I've got a chapter just called Trusting, and I've got a chapter called Isolating. And I took all those notes over time and gelled it down into one paragraph. What was it like trusting people, and how did I break out of that lack of trust cycle I was in? Because I can tell you today, even at 61, if I was given a choice to do something social or be by myself, I would probably 90% of the time say, I'd just rather be by myself. But you can't live that way. Right. That's not sustainable.
Right. Would you recommend a certain chapter for somebody to start on, maybe that is in that dark place currently? Would you say maybe the trust chapter would be a good place to start, or do you have what other chapters?
Well, the chapters, even though they're standalone, they are alphabetical, but it happened to be the very first chapter is probably the best chapter. I had to have one chapter to start out with, and that is accepting. It is very difficult to accept that you have a mental health concern, and the PTSD is unusual in itself. It's just not a mental health issue, as they are improving technology. They're also seeing it's a physical condition. So if they do an MRI of your brain, they look at the prefrontal cortex, or they look at the amygdala on an MRI, it shows up differently. a recent story about a Navy SEAL who committed suicide. They looked at his brain, and this one doctor used a more powerful type of MRI that they typically don't use on you and I, and they found micro scarring on the brain, and now they've got something else they can go look at. So whether you think you have an issue or not, if you've been through extreme trauma, more likely than not, you have issues just bigger than, whether it be depression, sadness, anger, whatever that, you may really need to get on top of it. Now, can you do anything about it? Not necessarily, but you can learn how to better manage it.
Right.
And I think that's success. That's really what the book brings back in. When you journal for 15 years and then you write about it 30 and 30 plus years later, you have the wisdom to understand, I did these things in my life to better manage my life so I could have a more whole, more complete life. Can you say normal? Probably not. It's normal in context to yourself, but it will be better. Right. There are a lot of things you can do.
Right. You've turned this book into a mission, a one-man tour to help reduce that veteran suicide rate. What kind of conversations are you having out there, not just with the veterans that you come across, but like the families and the friends as well?
For sure. So I'd probably, I've been having conversations with the family and friends for years, particularly Gold Star families, and those are tough conversations to have. I have had many, and they're imprinted pretty deeply, and I don't forget those when I'm talking because, I wish we could have saved their life, or helped them save their life, I should say. But when I have the conversations more from advocation, when I'm going out there, the one I hear the most is people are really concerned about, particularly like the veteran suicide rate. I don't know what it is in the normal population because it varies by state, but so your listeners can understand, the veteran suicide rate, it depends who's talking about it. The VA says it's shy of 18 per day. CDC says it's 21, and some really strong established veterans organizations say it's more like 26, 27 a day.
Yeah.
Nationwide. So when you go into that, people are really concerned that it's not getting better, and that's sort of my gut instinct. I don't think it is getting better. I think we need to do different new things. The other thing that's been really interesting, because I'm on this one-man mission, a lot of doors have been opened for me from senior politicians, senior military people, senior members of organizations, and of course the public, and you get this unfiltered conversation because you are like a reporter, right? You're an author, but honestly you're more like a reporter at times, and they tell you what they're really thinking, not what necessarily what they say out in public, and they too are concerned. It's really tough to hear this, and they're looking for ways to use the resources they have and maybe do things better. It's like a baseball team, right? You don't fire all your players. You change your lineup. You have a game strategy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we sort of need to do.
Okay. Yeah, agreed. So community members out in the public that you come across, not just the mental health professionals, what role can they help play in trying to prevent these veteran suicides? Is there anything like your normal standard person can do to help in any way?
Well, I think the first thing is to get more people like myself, people who are not in the profession or who are not being impacted by it, like with, say, the VA or the politicians, who end up having to give answers. Why are all these people killing themselves, an example? Getting more mainstream people who are out there talking about it, and people say, oh, he's just a regular guy. I mean, in a way I am, in a way I'm not. I mean, I'm really good at managing my symptoms because my symptoms are severe. So that's one thing. But the broader thing we can do, there's probably two things. We need peer-to-peer support groups. There are fragments of them available for veterans. There are fragments available for the general public, but it's not really well organized. They exist there, but they haven't been executed well. We need that because veterans, as an example, are able to establish peer-to-peer rapport very quickly. I mean, really quickly. I could tell you just some incredible stories, but they're able to establish this rapport so quickly, and you get in a peer-to-peer group, it really diffuses the high-risk issues at hand because, wow, I've got validation. The guy next to me knows what I'm going through. I actually had that in therapy. One of my therapists was a Marine veteran, and within a half hour, he was finishing some of my sentences for me because he had understood that experience so intimately.
Yeah.
That sort of segues into the second thing is we need to find a way to fund veterans willing to go into trauma, mental health care. All therapists aren't trained in trauma. It's actually a pretty small percentage, maybe 20%, if that. Trauma therapy is very different, and it's even more difficult when you're dealing with veterans, because that type of trauma, you really have to understand what it's like to be in the heat of the moment, and then also some of the moral issues that come up, guilt and the challenging topics. If we could get more veterans into mental health care, fund that, and get a commitment from them to stay in the state, I believe those two things would immediately help put downward pressure on that number. And all those people I mentioned earlier, when I've talked to them about this, almost 100% concurrence. I will say 100% concurrence, those two things. Peer-to-peer support groups and getting more veterans into trauma therapy.
Yeah, I know the peer-to-peer support groups are a big thing too. I have a few friends that have served, and you could be there for somebody to a certain extent, but if you haven't lived through or experienced it, like you said, like the other person had,
very true. I went to one support group that was predominantly Vietnam vets. That helped me the most. So I'm Beirut era, which is early 80s, and it's actually in the news quite a bit right now because of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of shared experiences going slightly older, but we need to get these younger people to break free for whatever's holding them back. I have some ideas what's holding them back, but get them to start talking. We need them to start talking, and back to what chapter do you read first? Acceptance.
Yep.
You need to go, okay, you got an issue. It's not life ending. Just deal with it, move on. And it's probably made me, honestly, because I was obliged to learn a lot more about mental health care, and I embraced it, and I learned about the symptoms and things, probably gave me a better overall life than I might have had I never gone through it.
Yeah. Well, for those that want to read Walking from the Shadows, or if they want to share it with someone in their life, what's the best way they can get a copy?
Well, there's different things to do. So if you want a paperback copy, it's about $10 on Amazon. However, if you're on Kindle Unlimited, my wife and I have chosen to leave it there for free forever. The other thing is, anybody listening to this is involved with a library, that being a county library or a college library, we will give them free hard copies so they can have that. In fact, so like locally, the Franklin County Library over in Chambersburg is going to be holding a copy. So we're trying to get out as much free copies as possible. This isn't a commercial venture.
Right. Are you available for any type of speaking engagements, book clubs, community discussions? Have you gotten into that?
I have. I've gotten into quite a bit of that. I was a keynote speaker for the Pennsylvania VFW convention, which was in Gettysburg a number of weeks back. But I actually like the small groups. I did one county library, and there were 5 people who attended, which is really good for a book reading. You go, 5? No, that's great. The conversations held in that room, the level of maturity and the caring of citizens towards one another, it was really touching. The people in the room were just bonding. And I said, again, it validated the peer-to-peer. So we have that, and of course, one person or 1,000 I'll talk to, As we like to say in the military, we're filling sandbags one at a time.
Yeah. Do you have any social media outlets people can find you at, or how can they get a hold of you?
I don't. I do a lot of advocacy on X, and I'm Kevin Macomber 9. Other than that, I don't. I tend to ride, with whom I'm partnering. So, for example, I will be on your social media outlet, and, I think that works the best that way.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Coming in here, and thank you again for your service. If you want to catch Kevin's book, Walking from the Shadows, you can check it out on Amazon, and you said Kindle Unlimited, correct?
Correct, for free.
And any public library, as long as they have the book, you can check it out there as well. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to be featured on an upcoming episode of Let's Talk TriState, call 717-597-9200 or email letstalk@921thegoat.com.